All right, what's up guys? Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to be putting together an installation video for you guys. So we're going to be showing you the installation process for our plug-and-play speaker kits for the 2019 to 2026 Corolla, GR Corolla, JBL, non-JBL equipped systems. The JBL and non-JBL do share a lot of the same speakers. There's a lot of similarities. So we are just going to put it all together in one video, but we will show you the differences between the install on the JBL and non-JBL, so you know which part to follow. I'll also be showing you the tools that you're going to need to do the install, and then I'll show you what comes included in the kits. And then we'll jump in the GR and we'll get it installed. This is my personal 2026 Premium Plus. For those of you that know us, this is not our first GR. We did start off with a 23 circuit right around that launch of the GR. So that's what we use to develop all of our products. Now we stepped up into a 2026. So we are going to be working on a couple different things for the 26 that the 25s and older did not have, like that factory subwoofer. So we'll be working on some of that stuff, but for now we'll show you this install process and we'll get you guys going on that. All right, so taking a look at the speaker kits themselves and what comes included, we're going to start off with the JBL system. So the JBL system, you do have three-way speaker system up front. So we'll take a look at what's included in this kit. So when you open up your box, you will have 4 of these foam pieces right at the top. We'll show you guys what you use this for when we get in there. You'll see your 2 mid-bass drivers. So again, these kits come completely assembled, ready to go. You're not going to have to piece anything together out of this box. Everything's literally ready to go for you to just plug and play in your car. So you got your 2 mid-bass drivers. You have your 2 mid-ranges. So these guys, again, everything's ready to go. OEM connectors. You have all of your gaskets and everything installed. So we got our 2 mid-ranges, and then we have our 2 tweeters. So our tweeter is going to have a little 2-pin Molex on there. And then you'll see in a second why we have those connectors on there. That's going to be for this guy here. So in this bag, we have our inline crossover. So this is going to plug into the factory wiring, and then the tweeter will plug into here. We did it this way so that in the event where you just start off with a speaker kit and then you decide down the road that you want to step up and add our DSP amplifier kit, you're not going to use this crossover anymore. So you can just unplug, and then your DSP amplifier kit will come with the appropriate wiring. That'll plug directly into the tweeter. So we did it so that you could kind of do it in steps and not have to modify any wiring if you ever wanted to upgrade. What you'll also get is another bag with our tweeter retaining clips. I'll show you how this is installed as well. From here, we move over to the rear speakers. And we pop this guy open. Very straightforward. You just have your 2 6.5-inch two-way coaxials for the rear doors, and again, fully assembled, ready to go. Just drop them in. From here, we take a look at the non-JBL system. Let's just slide this over here for a second. All right, so with the non-JBL system, the rear speakers are going to be exactly the same. So we're not going to show you a different set of rear speakers because they're exactly the same speaker. But when we look at the fronts, when we open up our box, you're going to have 2 of those foam pads. So 2 of those guys. You'll find your tweeters. Your tweeters are already assembled on their mounts with the OEM connector inline crossover ready to go. So you get those 2, and then you have your 2 mid-bass drivers. So same thing, fully assembled. All you got to do is plug them in. And you also have a bag of hardware. This bag of hardware is what you're going to use to mount our tweeters into that dash location. And again, we'll show you that process when we get in there. And from here, we'll show you what tools you're going to need to do this install, and then we can jump in and get started. Okay, so when it comes to tools to do this install, it's a very simple install. You really need only a few different tools to do this. Realistically, all you really need is a Phillips screwdriver, a 10mm socket and ratchet, and a panel popper. That's basically all you really need to do this install. But some of us like to use a screw gun with a Phillips bit, obviously weapon of choice. Panel poppers, I use a metal popper. A lot of people like to use plastic as well. Plastic's a little safer. I've been doing this for a while, so I just use metal. Just be careful if you do use a metal one. The only other tools that I'd say are kind of not necessary, but it does help, is one of these small flatheads. If you guys are car guys, you probably have a bunch of these lying around. You'll want to use this to release some of the clips and stuff. It just makes life a little easier, especially on the JBL equipped Corolla where you have to remove the A-pillar. This does help. Or a little pick or a little smaller pry tool will do the job as well. That's basically all you need as far as tools. Again, it's a super simple install. So we'll get that going and we'll get you in the car. We'll check it out. All right, so we're gonna start at the front driver's side door. Basically gonna do one front door and one rear door because the left and rights, they all come apart the same. So there's really no sense in doing all 4 doors, just to keep the video as short as possible. So starting here at this door, there are gonna be a couple pieces of trim we're gonna need to remove. First one is gonna be this trim piece here that goes along the grab handle. So you can kind of see where it breaks away from the actual handle itself. You could either use your panel tool or you could just kind of, if you can get your fingernails between the 2 panels and then just pull out towards you and then just work your way down and you'll be able to pop that guy off. There is a little retaining strap that holds this trim piece from like completely coming off. So you can kind of just work around that. Just kind of be careful. You don't want any of these clips to scratch your panels or whatnot. From there you have 2 Phillips head screws you can remove. This one here is pretty deep. So if you are using a screw gun, make sure you have a tip long enough to reach. If not, if you do have a Phillips, also make sure that is long enough to reach. So I'm just gonna use this guy here and get in there really quick. If the screw doesn't come out, don't worry, you can kind of tip it and get it out later. But from there, we'll just go over to our screw gun. Apparently I'm having problems here. All right, so we got that guy out. Oop. And we got that one out. Next thing we're gonna do is pop this cover off behind the door handle itself. So where the indicator is, you can see there's a little gap between the indicator and this little piece. You kind of want to get between that and then kind of pry out. So if you have your panel tool, you can just slide that guy between there and then kind of pull back. And that basically releases that guy. And that comes off. And then we have 1 Phillips head screw back in there. And then the window switches, we want to pop those out too. So what you're going to want to do is try to get on the front side of it here. So just pop that in place for now. So on the front side of it, you can see again where the panel is separate from the door panel itself. There's a little gap. You can slide your pry tool in there. And even if you just push it in there, it'll kind of already start to loosen it up. And then from there, you can pop. Just be careful as well. If you yank up too hard, you do risk scratching this side of your panel because of the kind of shape of it. So you just go ahead and pop those guys out. And then we can pull our window switch out. And we can go ahead and unplug that. And from here, it's just a matter of undoing the clips and pulling this panel off. So let's just secure this back in place for now. Again, so it doesn't flap around and scratch your panels. But right down below where the speaker is, there's a little gap where you can get your hand in. You should be able to just get your fingers in there and then pull towards you and the panel will pop off. And then we're gonna reach along the top and pull towards us. And that will release the panel. You get a better view of how the cables are held into the door itself. So there's little grooves that they kind of sit and push into. So if you reach behind them and you pull out, you'll basically be able to pull it out of the groove. And then you'll see this cable. You follow that cable. There's going to be another little groove where the cable kind of is able to slip through and the ball comes out. That's basically all you got to do. And you do the same thing on the top. And that will allow you to pull those guys out. And once we have the door panel off, we have access to our speaker. From here, it's just a super simple removal. We can unplug our speaker, take your Phillips or screwdriver, 3 bolts, and this guy pops right out. And that is your factory speaker. Very small magnet, very small motor structure. It's not designed to produce very much mid-bass at all. That's why you have virtually no bass in your GR Corolla, because these speakers are not good. So from here, we'll go ahead and drop the new speaker in and we'll button it back up. All right, so we have our new speaker that's going to drop in. One thing that I forgot to mention in the previous part of the video as far as what comes with the kit, you do get pieces of sound dampening material. You are going to get 4 squares if you're doing a full kit. So basically 1 for each door speaker. And this guy is going to install inside of the door. And what that's going to do is it's going to help absorb some of that energy coming off of the back of this speaker. So it's going to give it a foam-backed dampening material. This foam layer is going to really absorb a lot of that energy coming off of that speaker. So it's just going to help give you a little bit better sounding system and help eat up a little bit of that resonance that's in that door. If you want a full dampening kit, we also have that as well, and we'll drop a video on that install shortly after this. So you just peel this guy back off, and then what I would recommend is, especially if your car is a little bit on the older side, take some alcohol, rubbing alcohol, spray this inner area and wipe it down and let it dry before you install the dampening. You want to make sure the surface is clean before you install this guy in there. And then what you're going to do is just slide it in. And then there is a crash bar. When you look in here, you're going to see this crash bar. So I line it up right below the crash bar, right behind where the speaker is going to go. And then you can just go ahead and apply that guy down in there. If your surface is clean, this is going to stick super easy. So I just use my fingers. Make sure I get all my edges pressed down very good. Okay. And that's basically it for that dampening piece. We'll just get that in there, just again to help create a little bit better environment for our speaker. Once we get that in there, we can go ahead and put our speaker in. So it'll line up exactly like the factory speaker does. Reuse the factory hardware. And go ahead and screw the guy back in. Alright, and plug your connector back in, and you're done. And then we just reverse the process of removing the door panel, put that guy back on, and we will have our speaker completely installed. One more thing before we put our door panel back on, you want to go back and check all of the areas where the clips are supposed to go, and you want to make sure that all of the clips actually came off the door and they're on the door panel. So like in this case, I have a couple that got stuck behind. So you can take your panel tool and just get it between the clip and the door itself, and then you'll be able to kind of pop those guys loose and pop that off. So I actually had 2 that got stuck behind here. All right, so we'll pop those off, and then we can put them back on the door panel, and then we can get the door panel in. So once we get that back on, we can go ahead and put our cables back on for our lock and our door handle release. So you have your 2 cables here. You're gonna have a green and a white. The green is gonna be for the actual door handle, which what releases the door to open, and the white one is gonna be for that indicator for the lock. So what we're gonna do is we need to find right where this hole is, there's a little groove. We're gonna slide this guy back in there, and then we're gonna slide it back and lock it onto the door or door panel. And then once we get that one on, we're gonna do our top one for our lock. So again, find that hole where the ball slips into, and then you'll see where the cable fits into that groove. And then we'll line up the head back on there, lock that up. And then from here, we can basically just go ahead and reinstall the panel. So So once we get the cables back on, we can go ahead and place our panel back on. What I like to do is kind of set it on, and you'll feel where the clips kind of fit into the holes, and it's kind of in a spot where it won't really fall off. And then from here you can just apply pressure and secure those clips back on. And that is it. Secured back on, and now we go ahead and put our screws back in. And then we plug our window switch back in. And we go ahead and drop this guy back in place. So just be careful when you put it in so you don't scratch your panels. That locks back in. And in the process of screwing things back on, sometimes this will come out. If it does come out, it's not the end of the world. It'll just slide back into that groove where it's supposed to go. And we'll clip this guy back on. And then we have our cover at the top here. So what I like to do is just hold the release back, and then you kind of want to get this end in first and then push the back side. So kind of get it in there and then push on the back. You hear that click, and it's locked in. If you don't get this front side in first, that actually may come loose even though it's clipped in the back. So just keep that in mind. And that's basically your front speaker install. All right, so when it comes to the dash speaker, this is JBL, so we do have the mid-range. If you have non-JBL, it's gonna be a tweeter. So we can pop this grill off, and the grill basically just unclips and comes off. A couple pieces of advice: if you have the JBL equipped system, you're gonna wanna go ahead and remove the A-pillars first. It'll just make it a little bit easier to get the grill out, because the grill sometimes catches at the bottom of the JBL tweeter trim. But we can go ahead and pop it off anyway. So there's basically two clips here that pop off, and you can kind of slide this forward. So we can see where the dash and the grill meet. This area is pretty soft, so you can get your panel tool in there and then just kind of get enough leverage to pop it up a little bit to get your finger there, and you can kind of work it out. So just get in there. Once we get it kind of in there, you can pull back a little bit, and you can already see it starting to lift. We can get our finger in there and then just kind of work it without using the panel tool, just because these clips are really soft. So if you are trying to do this with your tweeter in, if you do have JBL, you kind of want to pull this way and up at the same time, and then you'll just slide that out. And now we have access to our dash speaker. So you have two 10mm bolts with Phillips heads on them, so you can use your 10mm to loosen that guy up. We'll go ahead and catch that there. I like to just loosen it, and then I can kind of use my fingers after that to pull it out. And we go ahead and lift the speaker out, and then you can get to the release clip, which is just like the door speaker. So push the tab in, slide that guy out, and there comes out your mid-range. Okay, and then from there, we can basically take our new mid-range and plug this guy in and get it installed. So we will plug it back into the factory connector. And then this is where those foam pads come into play. So it's adhesive backed. And basically what we want to do is use these to wrap this connector up so that the connector is not flapping around in the dash and rattling on things. So you can just go ahead and peel the backing off of this guy. And then just take that connector and just apply this on there, and just go ahead and wrap it around. And give it a couple good squeezes, and just like that, it's protected. There's not going to be plastic rattling on plastic in your dash. And then from here, we just go ahead and reinstall the new speaker. So you will notice that the speaker itself is not the same shape all around. So if you stick it in one way and it doesn't line up on the screw holes, just go ahead and flip it around. And then it'll line up on your screw holes. Put your factory hardware back in, and you can put your grill back on. And then we just go ahead and tighten this back down. And you're good to go. Okay, so for those of you with the non-JBL system, when you remove your grill, you're not gonna have that same hardware in these locations that the JBL system does. Some of them might have them, but most of them don't, so we do include that hardware for you because your tweeter is gonna get installed back in that same location, just like the mid-range would have been with the JBL system. So when you remove your grill from the non-JBL Corolla, you're not going to have this big of an opening in there. It's going to be a lot smaller of an opening, and the factory tweeter is just pressed into that. So what you're going to want to do is there's little ears that you can kind of pull on. Just pry on those ears and the tweeter will pop off. Leave that tweeter on the side. We're not going to install our tweeter back in that way. We're going to mount it into the dash. So once you get your tweeter out, you're going to take your hardware. So you're going to have 2 of these clips. And basically these clips are going to slide into those areas where you see kind of that indication where it should be going. So we can just go ahead and slide that on there. We'll do the same thing on this side. And then you're going to take your tweeter with its mount. Let's undo the twist tie. And then again, this is just for the sake of showing you how it's going to be installed. Because this vehicle that we're using is JBL, the connector here is not going to match this connector. But that's okay, because if you have the non-JBL, this will plug directly into the connector that is in the dash. So we'll just pretend that this guy plugged in like it's supposed to. And then you take that same foam piece and apply just like we did previously. And then from here, we have it connected. We're going to drop this guy down in here. And then we are going to line up our holes, and we're going to take the new 10mm mounting hardware, slide that guy in there, and we are going to tighten that down. And we're going to do the same thing on this side. Then you can go ahead and take your 10mm and your ratchet and go ahead and tighten that guy down. And basically, once you get that tightened down, you'll be able to put your grill back over, and now your tweeter is mounted to your dash. It's going to be a lot more stable that way. You're never going to worry about the tweeter falling out of that factory spot where it's kind of pressed into there. This is going to be a lot better to kind of hold your tweeter in place. So this is again for the non-JBL Corolla. That is where you're going to be installing your tweeter. So now we're going to move on to the A-pillars. So this is only for the JBL equipped Corollas. If you have a non-JBL Corolla, this does not pertain to you, and you are lucky. So this is probably the hardest thing when it comes to doing this speaker install. It's just a little bit harder to do than everything else. So we can see where the A-pillar stops and it matches up to that headliner, so you can kind of see that gap there. And then also if you kind of grab on your weather stripping and pull this back a little bit towards the outside of the car, you'll be able to kind of get your finger underneath the lip of the A-pillar. So we just want to get our hands under there. You can use your pry tool as well, but these panels are so soft you can just get your fingers in there. If you want to get your finger between the weather stripping and the A-pillar, and basically you can see this is the A-pillar here, and then we're going to pull towards the inside of the car. And then that releases the upper clip, and then there's also one more clip further down. So you got 2 clips in there. Once you get that loose, it is not going to come out. There are retaining clips that hold the A-pillar from flying off when the airbag deploys. So we need to release those in order to get the A-pillar completely out. All right, so I got the panel down, and you can see where that clip secures into the body, and there's going to be 2 tabs that you can push to remove it. I'm going to get you a closer look after this, but basically you got one there, and then you're going to have one further down here. So let me get you guys a better look at what that's going to look like. But in order to get it, you can kind of just pull down on the A-pillar a little bit, and you'll be able to kind of access where those clips are. All right, so I got a clip back in just to show you guys kind of how these clips work. So we can see here at the bottom, hopefully this is focused, there's a little tab down here, and then there's also a little tab up at the top. So there's one on each side. I'm gonna push that tab in, and it'll release that portion of the clip, and then you just do the top section of it. All right, so from here we can go ahead and remove the tweeter from the A-pillar. So you're gonna see there's gonna be 3 little tabs or ears on the sides of the tweeter. You basically want to get your pry tool or your little flathead in there and kind of pry those back so the tweeter can push out, and you'll see where the tabs are. Pry it back and it'll clear. But if you're too rough with it, you may crack it. Well, basically there, and we pop that tweeter out. There is one thing that I forgot to mention that you will want to have is just a small razor blade. Once you get that tweeter out, you will see on the inside of these ears, there are little ridges. There's going to be 2 basically on each ear. You just want to trim those ridges off. It's not going to affect the way the factory tweeter goes back in. It's not going to damage anything. It's just, we need to pull that back just for the new tweeter to slide in. If you don't, you can put the tweeter in, but it doesn't sit as nice. So I like to just kind of trim those back a little bit, and then the tweeter will slide in easier. Okay, so this is a better look at those ridges. So you got 2 little ridges on each tab, and it's really not hard to trim down. You just take your razor blade and just kind of slide it down, and it'll just kind of cut that right out. It doesn't take a lot of force. Basically just slide them down and it'll cut those little ridges out, and you'll be able to get the tweeter in there a little bit easier. All right, so once we get all of the ridges trimmed down, we can take our tweeter and we can go ahead and kind of just set that in place on our A-pillar. I like to set it so the wire kind of goes down. Right now it's just kind of floating in there. If you push on it, you'll feel it kind of slide in, but it doesn't stay in place. And that's what the retaining clip is made for. So the retaining clip, there is a area on it that's labeled back. That back portion is going to go to this back portion of the A-pillar here, so on this side. The legs on it, they all kind of line up with the ears that are there. So if I pop this tweeter back in, and we take this guy, again, we take the side that's labeled back, and that's going to go obviously back. So we can kind of set it over our tweeter, and then you can kind of just push down on it, and that'll start to lock in. One thing that you will kind of want to avoid doing is pushing hard here on the gloss black. You want to keep your hands on the actual plastic of the A-pillar, not on that trim piece. That's going to allow it to kind of push in a little bit easier. If you have your hands on the gloss black, you're applying a little bit too much pressure there, and it may not allow this to push in. So if you hold like right on this edge here, it'll allow you to push in a little bit easier. And then once you get that clip in, then you're basically good to go. One more thing that you're going to want to do to get your A-pillar ready to get installed back into the car these clips are just kind of dangling right now. So you want to feed this loose end back into the pillar. And then you'll see these little tabs where it's going to lock back in. Let's give it a little push. That'll lock that guy back in. And go ahead and do the same thing on the top one here. It's going to be a lot easier to reinstall in the car if you pre-lock this back in. So just go ahead and lock those back in, and then we can take that over to the car. And then we're also going to need our adapter. So we have, this will plug into the OEM connector. This will plug into the tweeter. So you can either plug it into the tweeter now if you want, and then take it over to the car and we can plug this in. And then you are also going to take one of these foam pads so you can wrap this connector up as well. All right, so now that we are back in the car, first thing we're going to do is, again, because this is JBL, like I mentioned before, it will probably be easier to just put the grill back in now. So when we look at the grill, you got two little ears back here. Those are going to slide in to the little slots in the back of the dash. So we'll just slide those in there, and then we can go ahead and push the guy back down, and our grill is locked back in place. Now we can take our A-pillar, let's just set it on top of the dash. We can go ahead and grab our OEM connector and grab our adapter connector, and we can go ahead and plug that guy in there. And we can take our foam piece, and we can go ahead and wrap this guy up here. And again, that's just going to stop that connector from rattling around on any plastic or metal in the dash. So now that we have that secured, we can go ahead and put the A-pillar back in. So you can see on the A-pillar, we got one ear here, and then there's another ear right here. These guys are going to have to slide back in to the slots in here. So we're going to go ahead and take that. It's okay if it sits kind of here. It's not really going to be in the way of anything. And then we're going to take our A-pillar and we're going to start working it back into the dash. So you want the edge of the A-pillar to kind of ride right along the edge of the grill and then push down into the dash. And then that's basically what you need to do there to get it in. And then we just need to find where our clips line up on the A-pillar and then push that guy back in. Simple as that. All right, so we're gonna move over to the rear door now. The rear doors don't open very far on these cars, so I kind of gotta catch it this way, or else you're not gonna be able to see anything. So it's just as simple as the front door. It's actually easier because there's a little less to do, but it is a very straightforward removal. So we have to remove the cover up in here behind the release. So same like we did in the front. We have this indicator, and between the indicator and that cover there's a little gap, so we can slide our panel tool in there and then just pull back this way, and that'll release that cover. Pop that off, and then we got to remove the trim piece over the door handle cup holder area. You can start from this back side and work your way forward. One tip, this kind of foam armrest pad, if you push down a little bit, you'll be able to see a little bit more gap in there. So just make a little bit more clearance for you to get your panel tool in there. And then you just kind of want to pry down, and then you'll get that to release. And then once you get that to release, if you get your hand in the grip area here, you'll feel that there's a gap now. You can get your finger in there and kind of pull up on it. And then you'll be able to release it. Again, be careful because the way these door panels are shaped, it's got like this curve to it, and the curve comes closer the higher up you get. So if you yank really hard, you can scratch your panel. So just be careful with that. And then we'll just go and release all the way back. Remove the clip for the window switch, and then now we got 3 Phillips screws that we need to remove. Get those guys out of there. And then we can go ahead and remove the door panel. The rear door is really light, so there's not a lot of weight to it. So if you just grab on the panel, you're probably just gonna pull the door into your head. So one little tip, take your knee and kind of hold the door itself. And then you can reach underneath to the door panel, get your fingers under there, and give it a good tug towards you. And that'll release it. And just kind of work your way up. Sometimes it'll just come right off. Sometimes you gotta catch the top as well. But just a little. Okay, and there you go. So one thing that I wanted to show a little easier is removing these cables from the back of the door. So we can catch it a little bit better angle here. So you can see there's 2, and they both kind of press in to these little grooves. So all you got to do is kind of reach behind and just pull them away from the door panel, and they just pop right out. And we'll do the same for the top one. So once it releases out, there's still a little ball, so you just kind of move the cable until the ball pops out of the groove, and then you can get those guys out of there easy. Okay, so once we get the door panel off, it's really just a matter of unplugging and unscrewing the stock speaker. So we remove our plug, take the 3 10mm bolts out of there, pop that speaker out. And this one's even worse than the front speaker. I mean, there's like nothing to this speaker. It's pretty bad. And then we just go ahead and install our new, better speaker. We'll take our factory hardware. And we'll just get that guy in there. All right. Plug our connector back in, and basically we just reinstall the door panel. Well, before we reinstall the door panel, we do want to double check and make sure there's no clips left behind. They need to be reinstalled back on the door panel. Another helpful tip when you're putting the door panels back on, make sure you pull your harness through the openings where the window switches and stuff need to go. The last thing you want to do is put everything together and realize your harness is shoved somewhere that you can't get to it, and you got to take your door panel back off. And then we reinstall our screws. Put our trim back in with our window switch, and our cover back in here. So again, with this cover, this end, you kind of want to go in at an angle first and then push in that way. And that is the rear doors. Well, I forgot to film the outro to this video, and I'm not going to set everything back up. So I'm going to sit my butt right here on the floor, and I'm going to tell you guys that concludes our install video. Hopefully that was enough information for you guys to follow along, get a good idea of what it takes to install this kit. It's a super, super easy kit to install. I know we're going to get questions about how you guys can purchase this. Shoot us an email, info@plugandplayaudio.com. It'll also be down in the description. Send us an email. I'll get back to you guys. I'll work with you one-on-one as far as purchasing. I do everything purchasing, tech support. I do all the stuff myself. We are still working on our website. It's probably going to be a while. I'm not putting a lot of importance in our website. I would rather just deal one-on-one with our customers. So with that said, thank you guys for watching, and we'll catch you in the next video.